What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and happy Monday to all of you guys out there. I hope you all enjoyed your weekends, and also happy Halloween week to all of you out there who celebrate it. I know I sure do. It's my favorite holiday, so big week for me over here in the TBR camp. But in today's video, we are going to be talking all things charge skill mechanics as we go ahead and talk about the newest addition to the game as far as new mechanics are concerned. I've had a lot of people asking me questions about how I feel about this new mechanic, as well as a couple of questions that I feel like I can answer in this video. So that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do. But before we get into it, if you guys are new here to the channel, make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe. We are officially 100 subscribers away from 3,000, and we're trying to get there by the end of the year, so you can help us to achieve that goal. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. So you guys may or may not have noticed, but over on the official forums overnight, Yuri did go ahead and make a new post. Now this notice is basically going to be giving people more of an introduction into the charge skill mechanics and giving them a little bit more of an explanation on how they're going to work. I'll leave a link in the description to this post, but this post is basically just a cut copy paste of something that has been readily available over on the Korean and Japanese versions of the forums ever since they released that dev video going into all of this stuff. So this isn't necessarily anything new, and if you've seen that dev video, largely you should already know kind of what's going on with this new mechanic. If you guys want to see that dev video, you can check that out. I actually have it linked in the description along with this notice because they're both going to be available in the same post. But I figured I would go ahead and talk about this a little bit since I was already planning on talking about this topic today as more of a shorthand version of a TBR video. For those of you who are unaware, I am going to be kind of in and out for the next 2 days doing a little bit of traveling. So basically, if the next 2 videos here on the channel are a little bit on the shorter side, I apologize, but unfortunately, things are going to be the way they're going to have to be for the time being until I am back home. But I digress. Let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. So when it comes to the charge skill mechanic, I don't think anybody really needs me to explain what a charge skill is. If you've ever played a Mega Man game or a Metroid game or a fighting game that has this type of mechanic, you know exactly how it works. Basically, in the King of Fighters All-Star, they're going to allow us with SS King and SS Yuri on their S1s, which are going to be their projectile skills. We can hold down the button instead of just tapping it. If we hold it down, they are going to wind up that projectile, and then once they've wound it up, they are going to be able to unleash it if you release the button, and it is going to be doing a lot more damage than it normally would if you were to just tap it. And that's basically what you're looking at there in a nutshell. One big caveat to this is once you are awakened, you can go ahead and automatically use the fully charged version of the skill, which is a big deal because that means you are going to be doing a lot of damage that you wouldn't normally get if you didn't have this mechanic available to the character. So I feel like still that is going to be the biggest perk to this new mechanic, but that's basically how it's going to work in a nutshell, with maybe a few other little things that they haven't necessarily revealed to us yet that are going to be mixed in there as well. One thing a lot of people have noticed is that on Yuri's particular S1, when she's charging, where she's winding up her arm, if there's anybody in the vicinity of her arm when she's winding it up, she can do damage with that. So that's a big deal there. When it comes to King, we don't really have any sort of outlook yet one way or the other on how that is going to work for her, whether or not she's going to have any sort of wind-up mechanic there. Me and my friend Ty, who is also an enormous King fan, we've been trying to wrap our heads around whether or not we think there's going to be any type of mechanic like that on King's kit, and honestly neither of us can come up with anything that makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm basically saying this because I want to make sure that everybody's aware there's still a lot of details about this new mechanic that we don't know about. We're just going to have to wait and see. I'm sure that there are going to be plenty of surprises to come with this, or at least a couple that we aren't aware of. So keep that in mind, guys. We aren't playing with all the facts in this video, so there's still quite a bit left to the imagination here, and that's why I feel like a lot of people out there who are making knee-jerk reactions to this new mechanic especially the people out there, which again is a very vocal minority, but a minority nonetheless, of people who are very dogged about this is going to be a bad mechanic somehow, and I really just don't see it that way. So I kind of want to talk about why. Now, the reason why I don't think that this is going to be a bad mechanic is for the simple fact that it is never a bad thing whenever you have more options, and that is really what it boils down to. With this new charge skill mechanic, you basically look at these characters kit-wise are exactly the same as what we've come to expect, with the addition of this charge skill ability. So basically, you think of it this way. You could take any character in the game with a projectile and add the ability to charge that projectile and do 2, 3, 4 times the amount of damage on that projectile than they normally would. That's a big deal for any character. However, it is kind of a sus mechanic when you think about it in the terms of, do you really want to stand flat-footed for that long charging something? Even if you're a character like Yuri, and again, we don't know if King has this one way or the other, who can do damage if they get too close, you're still leaving yourself very open and very vulnerable to damage and getting hit and then getting comboed, and that is a big deal. But my thing about it is, they've been very clear in the fact that we don't have to charge these skills. So basically what that reads to me as is, basically these characters are going to operate as normal unless you are awakened, and then once you're awakened, you're basically just going to have a fully charged version of that skill on that S1 that you can spam out there and do a ton of damage. Now, one thing that is kind of, it is something that I do feel like is worth mentioning is I don't necessarily see anywhere, whether it's in the footage, which again we've seen very little, or in here that really kind of confirms one way or the other if it's just going to be that initial S1 on the Awakening rotation that will be fully charged, or if all of the S1s on the Awakening rotation will be fully charged. I don't know. I would assume they all would be, but it's hard to know. Now, it doesn't really make a huge difference either way because, again, it's just an extra addition and an extra option to the kit either way. But if you are able to just spam fully charged S1s the entire Awakening rotation, that could bode very, very well for these characters' overall damage output. Now, one other thing that I'm really interested in, especially in the case of Yuri, because, again, I don't want to have to repeat this, but we don't really know if King is going to have a mechanic like this or not. But at least in the case of Yuri, with the way she winds that fireball up, I'm wondering how that is going to work with characters that are in a corner, because if it has off the ground and you corner a character, that could get really silly really quick. So I do feel like this new charge skill mechanic has a lot of potential. It's going to come down to how they implement it. I completely agree with people that you aren't going to want to just stand flat-footed, like I said, and try to charge that thing in a normal fight. That's not something that I would ever really see being useful. And again, if you're doing it in things such as Guild Raid, that's going to waste a lot of time on the clock, and normally you don't want to waste time on the clock. But if you're just considering the fact that it's giving you an extra bump in damage on your Awakening spam, that I think is really the big selling point, and that's really what I'm looking toward. But when it comes to this new mechanic, I think everybody should take the wait and see approach. Like I said, personally, for me, I think this sounds like it's going to be something that could be very useful, especially on Awakening, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, we don't have all the information, and I always caution people, try not to make judgment calls on things, especially content, until you have actually gotten all the details on how it works and what it does. So that's pretty much how I feel about it. I know there's been quite a few people that have asked questions about this, and I wanted to go ahead and make sure that I reiterated to everybody that that is basically how I feel about it, and those are the things that I would look at when I'm thinking about this new mechanic, or any new mechanic in general. You always just want to take a wait and see approach, but we only have a couple of days. Hopefully overnight we do finally get a reveal trailer that will give us a better look at these kits. But in the end, that is pretty much how I feel like this is going to work, and I do feel like it does have a place in the meta. Do I think it's going to be broken? No, not really. Do I think it's going to be on the level of those barrier skills that we just saw with the Boss Syndrome Volume 4 characters? Not at all, but I do feel like it is something that, depending on how that damage scales, and if we can just spam fully charged versions of these projectiles on Awakening, if that is the case, I do think it could be something really, really good, but time will tell. But anyway, you guys, that is going to be today's video. Like I said, we're going to be doing a bit of a shorter video today, less intensive on the edits because, again, I am not home. But I will see you guys in tomorrow's video, hopefully back to our regularly scheduled programming, and maybe, who knows, we'll get an actual reveal trailer for these characters. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. If you found it informative, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. You all take care. Peace.
Contenders.